Hi, I'm Monica Cost, author of the Authentic Living book, The Things I Used to Do to Sneeze, How to Live an Authentic Life. I want to take a moment to talk a little bit about the book for anyone who might be interested in purchasing it or anyone who hasn't purchased the book. I wrote the book because I personally, about 10 years ago now, went through a realigning of my life. I came very quickly into places in my life where I was living disingenuously. And from the outside in, my life looked fantastic. And I always heard from other people how fantastic my life was. But somewhere in my belly, unfulfillment was raging. And I had to take a look because it didn't match what people thought I had and what I felt like I had. It didn't match. And so what I discovered, not only through my own process, but in that, talking to hundreds of people, was that I was living a life in what I like to call the land of make-believe, or the LAM. And that's a place where perception matters more than your truth. And so, unfortunately, we don't ever get an opportunity to discover our values. And when I say values, I'm not talking about things like, most people will say God, family, work kind of thing. I'm talking about the way that I prefer to approach life and the filter by which I use to make decisions and to go about the world. When we're born, society gives us our values. They tell us what's better, what's worse, what's good, what's bad. And based upon how we live, we get these labels. And so you add on top of that the expectations and then this need to achieve these labels, these societal labels. Everybody wants to be smart, pretty, a go-getter, famous, popular, and so on. And by the way, labels aren't always good. Sometimes the expectations for people aren't always high. But when we start chasing these labels, oftentimes we will do what it takes to get the label or to achieve the emotional sensation that we're looking for, only to realize later in life that we've somehow gotten lost because we haven't followed our true north or our values. So after I went through this process myself in all these areas, financially, aesthetically, relationally, spiritually, emotionally, parentally, when I say I turned over every stone, I turned over every stone. And some would say I actually turned over the apple cart. I made a lot of changes in my life, and pretty quickly. But don't get overwhelmed if you're thinking about making changes, or if you have that unfulfilling feeling in your belly. Don't think that you have to make all the changes at once. The title, The Things I Used to Do to Sneeze, comes from the fact that I really enjoy the emotional, the physical sensation of sneezing. And so when I was little, I used to do things to make myself sneeze. So it wasn't that my body was naturally going to sneeze. I made it sneeze by creating it. And so when I was trying to think about how to talk about authentic living, I paralleled the false ways that people try to achieve emotional sensations with the false ways that I achieved the physical sensation of sneezing. So I want to read a little bit from the book. Speaking of sensations, while pondering how to deliver a message on authentic living, I began thinking about how people long for emotional sensations, much as I did for the physical sensation of sneezing. Similar to the disingenuous process I use to make myself sneeze, sometimes we utilize a disingenuous or false process to achieve the emotional sensations we're after. This false process is one that is based on external values, such as those suggested by society, rather than our self-discovered authentic values. When we pursue emotional sensations through processes that are not aligned with our core value systems, feelings of anger, depression, disappointment, guilt, insecurity, jealousy, sadness, and self-loathing often arise. We adopt systems that are buried in what I have named the LAM, or the land of make-believe, a place where truth is based on perceptions and hidden by labels. And most emotional sensations are achieved through elements of a false life journey to keep achieving the desired labels. I remember when I made the decision to leave my corporate job at a commercial real estate firm and to take a chance on being a full-time entrepreneur. I desperately wanted to run my pathfinding and strategy firm full-time. After all, I'd spent my whole life up to that point living up to everyone else's expectations. I was polite, a good student, and I chose the major in college that my teachers, parents, and counselors thought was best, finance. I got high grades throughout high school, jobs in finance that paid well above average, and so on. I was what some would have labeled a good egg, and I only very rarely stepped out of line or challenged the system. But now it was time to transition from that safe space to a place that felt more like me, more authentic. Before I could do that, though, I first had to determine who I was and what authentic meant to me. So I hope that you'll get the book, not just because I wrote it, but because I want as many people as possible. I mean, I just think that the world overall and in general would be better off if we didn't have to chase the labels so much. If we could live from our core and that we could accept other people living from their core, that we could stop judging people based upon their value systems, and we could just have an understanding that maybe they don't share the same values we share, and that will just give us an indication on how far or how long we can walk together with those people. And it's not to be judged. So get the book. I look forward to hearing your feedback, and I thank you so very much for listening. I'm Monica Cost.